Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or wherever you might be joining us from. My name is Arise, Michael Godfrey, and I am your friend. I'm going to be your host for the weekly podcast on the priceless value of education. And I'm so excited you're joining us, all right, from wherever you might be joining us from, all from the part of the world. Thank you so much for making it a time with us, all right, to go through this very educative section. And I can assure you that at the end of the day, the things you're going to be learning, which I believe are foundational, will help you in significant way, all right, as you navigate through for you who might be an educationist as you navigate through your career, all right, or maybe probably you are a student, all right, as you navigate through your learning process, this will serve you in no small way. And of course, parents also are highly welcome because what we're going to be discussing, um, it's a matter of importance to the parents also. They need to understand what really happens, you know, in this very topic, or how this topic affects their children um, positively, and otherwise. So I'm sharing on the priceless value of education. All right, it's a weekly podcast, and this podcast will be uploaded via our social media platforms. All right. And whenever it's uploaded, you get an opportunity. If you subscribe with us, it's very important you subscribe. You get, you know, you get a notification whenever we drop a weekly episode. The podcast will, be uploaded every Monday, 8 a.m. All right, 8 a.m. West African time. All right, and wherever you might be joining us from, or wherever you might be receiving the notification from, you can as well um, get the recorded version at your specific time zone. All right, so I'm going to be sharing on what is primary about primary education. Okay, what is primary about primary education? Okay, and somebody might be wondering, okay, why are you teaching about primary and primary education? Just some days ago, you were talking about laws, the keys and the laws of academic excellence, all right? Days after you did a podcast on life in the university. So why are we here now? All right, and that question is a very beautiful one. Let me help you understand. So, as a trained educationist, all right, as a trained educationist, I have three messages I impact the students community with, and by extension the body of educators we have in Nigeria, but extensively around the whole world. All right, so three main messages. The first being the keys and the laws of academic excellence, which is really tailored to the students, to the global students community. All right, and Life University, the vision around Life University is to help students live an effective life on their respective campuses. All right. And why the priceless value of education is to really bring each and every one of us to that standpoint where we can appreciate, and embrace the priceless value of education. Of course, education is really priceless. Is really priceless. If you feel education is not priceless, so I need you to help me name the price. What do you feel should be the appropriate cost for education or the appropriate value for education? It's really priceless. All right. Long time ago, I had a quote from the internet now, although the source is unknown. Right. The quote goes this way: If you think education is expensive, why not try ignorance? Whenever I had to reflect on that very quote, a lot of things comes to mind. If you think education is expensive, in other words, if you feel what you're committing, to the development of your soul, you're using the process of education or using the instrument of education, if you feel that's expensive, all right, committing your resources, committing your efforts, and what have you, if you feel that's expensive, why not try ignorance? And you know one thing about ignorance will make you pay as much that you don't want to pay. All right, because ignorance is, I feel, on my book coming up. The Priceless Value of Education, which will be released sometime this year. All right. I describe ignorance as a blind spot or a spot. So you don't know you have it. All right. You have a placard of dark spots walking around town, and other people can, of course, perceive that you are ignorant. All right. They can perceive the level of ignorance you have. However, you yourself, you personally, you don't know, you are ignorant in this and the rest of that. So ignorance can be very, very, deep issue to deal with. And the cure for ignorance is education. All right. So I don't wish to take you through the process of education. I really do believe, in the coming weeks, I'm going to be dedicating some time to really teach on, the core values, core importance of education. But for today, I'm going to be teaching on the primary, what is really primary about primary education. All right. And if you can look at the table, which you can clearly see, the first week we're going to be looking at understanding the importance of primary level of education. The second week, we're going to be looking at analyzing the challenges facing primary level education. We're going to study, UNICEF reports on Nigeria primary level of education. Right, third week, fourth week, you all have all of that at the table. So it's going to be a very interesting one. All right. So the objective for this very podcast is threefold. All right. To help Nigerian educators, students, and others understand the concept of primary level, the primary level of education. All right. Secondly, to help them understand the objective of primary level of education. And lastly, to highlight the importance of primary level of education. All right, it's going to be a very beautiful one. Just join me as we, you know, take on this journey together. All right, so by means of introduction, okay, it's very beautiful to lay the foundation to help you understand um, the concept around primary level of education. Now, as you know, education in Nigeria is divided into three main levels. All right, we have the primary level, the secondary level, and the tertiary level of education. These three put together is what forms the structure of our educational system in Nigeria. All right, three main levels, all right, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Now, what I need you to understand is that primary level of education is the former, or what I would consider to be the official starting foundation level or foundational level, if you like, of education in Nigeria. All right, so it's that foundation that begins the educational process the learner receives or the child, a child receives. All right, so in this level of education, learners are introduced to elementary subjects. Come on now, you don't wish me to take you back to your primary days. All right, so I'm very sure, during your primary level days, you were really introduced to elementary subject like mathematics, all right, English language, general studies. That word, general studies now, or it encompasses a number of subjects. Civic education is general studies, all right, and business education. I think that forms the basis of general studies. Also, home economics and the rest of those subjects are considered as general studies. So this is where the learner is really introduced to these elementary subjects. All right, it is also that level of education where learners are exposed to basic skills, all right, talking about creative arts, drawing, painting, and handwriting, communication, and the rest of that. All right, so I found out when I was making my research for this very podcast. I came across an article, all right, an article by two professors from repute university in Nigeria. And in that very article, there was a definition that really, does this idea um, about education that really, was really intriguing. So according to Olania, all right, according to Olania 2008, all right, according to Olania and Obadara 2008, primary education is the foundation upon which all levels of education, such as secondary school or secondary level of education and tertiary level of education, are built upon. All right. Meaning, what this means is that primary level of education is really that foundation, it's really that bedrock for other levels of education, of which includes secondary and tertiary level. And now this is, it is upon this backdrop that all of these other levels of education finds their expression. All right. And now something very beautiful I also came across, you know in this same vein, you say, thus the consequence of this is consequence of what? Now the consequence of primary education being the foundation of other levels of education, the consequence is that whatever happens to primary level of education, all right, whether positive or negative, we have an impact on the secondary and the tertiary level of education in the same direction. Now, what you want to associate with the meaning of this is that, for example, if we have I don't want to be very specific because I believe I'm talking to the global student community, the global educators, educationist community, and the rest of that. So I don't want to be very specific, but for the sake of reference, permit me to use a country like Nigeria, right? So in this similitude, whatever happens or whatever affects our primary level of education, that is to say, if we have a list of or a number of unqualified teachers, all right, teachers who are not qualified by the standards of the national policy on education, all right, when we have teachers who are not qualified, of course we will have students who will not be well taught, all right, who will not be well grounded in this elementary subject, who will not be exposed to these basic skills. So the reason of on the basis of their lack of qualification or poor qualification, all right, we will find that we have students with lopsided knowledge, all right, lopsided understanding of this elementary subject and the rest of that. Now, in that same view, because this has happened to the primary level education, whatever happens here or whatever begins here has a way of growing, or has a way of affecting whatever happens in the secondary level of education. Now get this right with me, and of course you're going to be understanding why I'm making this very statement. For example, if a child fails to understand an elementary subject like mathematics or English language at the primary level of education, which was due to the poor qualification of the teacher, there's no way that child will be well grounded in mathematics or in English language by the time he or she gets to secondary school. And to even make the matter worse, by the time you get to the tertiary institution, nobody has your time. All right, nobody will give you that personalized, attention or individual attention. The lectures that happen in the university or the teaching and learning process that happen in university is very, very general. It's one to many group, all right, one to a group of students or one to more, groups of students at the same time. It's lecture based. The teaching method is lecture based. It is not a discussion method where you really find the interactiveness is based on the individual lecturers, all right, or the individual lecturer to say, okay, so the primary level of education is that important. Whatever affects it, will also affect other levels of education in the same direction and also in the same magnitude. All right. So now, what then is the concept of primary education? All right. So I'm going to be sharing with you a few concepts I found handy while I made my research for this study. So Adepoju in Orimodu 2007 sees primary education as the education which is exposed to children in primary institution where the child acquires number one, knowledge, all right, where the child acquires knowledge, skills, thoughts, feelings, and actions. All right. Now, to help you understand this, okay, it also goes further by saying which are considered necessary for all citizens, regardless of your social status, regardless of your vocation or sex. Now, to help you understand this better, all right, a chart I made use of a chart just to help you understand that better. So when you look at this very box, you can see it's a flow chart that has about five components, which that very definition help us to understand. Okay, so it says, is this very process or the education that is given to a learner that exposes the learner, to knowledge, to skills, to thoughts, feelings, and action. And I, for one, I believe this is how it happens. All right. Now, I didn't find this in the research, but as a trained educationist, I believe this is how it happens. Now, knowledge begins the process. A child has to be taught over a period of time. A child has to be taught, a child has to be well grounded. The teaching and learning process, all right, has to go on over a period of time. And if this goes on, as planned, all right, under normal circumstance, all right, or other normal, under favorable conditions of learning, knowledge is developed into the minds of the learner. All right, so knowledge is formed. Basic ideas, basic concepts about life, about the subject area is developed. All right. Now, when we have knowledge in place, what will be the next building block will be skills. All right, because the accumulation of knowledge, you know if it finds practical expression, it will metamorphose into skill development. Okay, for example, a child who have been taught the theories of, now I'm using the word theories, I know that might be very complex for the primary level of education. So let me say, a child who has been taught the basics of creativity or creative writing or painting, all right, having been taught for a period of time, something begins to happen to the mind of the learner. And this is true for every teaching and learning process that happens. Something begins to happen to the mind of the learner. Skill develops, skill begins to develop. And now this can develop in two forms. It could be inherent, it could be as a result, this very child has this skill inherently, all right, as a gifting, or it could be developed by this process of knowledge. All right, whichever, knowledge plays a very vital role in the development of skill. So over time, the young learner finds out that, oh, I could draw. I've been taught whenever I draw, whenever you want to draw, hold your pencil this way. All right, hold your pen this way. Ensure your pen is not. Ensure you are holding your pen by the head, or probably by the tip of it, or whatever. Ensure you're not hard pressing the ink to the paper or whatever. Ensure you're using the right color. Now this is knowledge, all right, and this forms into a body of skill that the learner can now use. And this is what I also believe, from skill comes thoughts. So the learner has done this over a period of time. He has done this, all right. He finds, oh wow, this is beautiful. I couldn't draw. So now the learner begins to form different images of, figures he wants to draw, or things, objects he wants to draw. So the thought process comes in. So, gradually, whatever he sees, he wants to draw. And, while I was just thinking about this, I found this very handy because while I was in primary school, I used to be a very good artist. Yes, I could remember myself drawing, an airplane. All right. So, yes, I could draw one very beautifully well, right? I could draw one and it was really good. Well, I don't know what happened. Immediately I got down to secondary school, I think I lost that ability. you know. Of course, there's a place for consistency in all of this, even though that wasn't inherent, all right, but it was formed, on the basis of knowledge, basis of observation, and the rest of that. So, after a period of thinking, after a period of reflective thought, and the rest of that, this happened unconsciously. It's not as if the learner knows, oh, I'm going through a period of reflective thinking, or a forward thinking. No, it just happens unconsciously to the learner. He just finds that, oh, he's thinking about something and all of that. Now, the accumulation of thoughts over a period of time forms feelings. All right. He begins to feel in a certain way. And once that happens, he takes actions. All right. Takes an action, makes the drawing or whatever he can, or whatever he's able to do about the knowledge that has been given to him. He takes action and the rest of that. And action, of course, comes back to knowledge again. So you understand the chat flow now. All right. So it's really on the basis of that we can really understand the concept of education. Now, according to the National Policy on Education 2013, it states that education is the primary education is that very education given to children within the age range of 6 to 12. All right. This stands as a foundation upon which the rest of the other education system is built, like I've rightly mentioned. And this is designed to prepare the child for higher level of education. Okay, the things you know or the things you were taught in primary school, if we have to take all of those foundation and we send you to the secondary school, in other words, after a child is born, all right, you don't take him through the pre-primary school, kindergarten, all of that. Just allow the child to grow, all right, give the child the household education or what we call informal education, all right, and allow the child to go through that. When the child is ripe enough to go to secondary school, send the child to secondary school. You will find out that child will struggle to adapt to the learning environment, struggle to understand whatever might be taught because he's lacking of the very basic foundation. All right. Now, I found out something very interesting, very beautifully. I found it very intriguing also. During my research, I found out that about 98% of, the over 195 countries of the world, all right, prioritize primary level of education. In other words, they offer primary level of education to her children. So what I discovered also is that there's this slight difference, and the slight difference occurs in two forms. Firstly, in the name it's called. Now, not every country among these 195 countries I just talked about, not every one of them calls it primary level of education. For others, it's an elementary level of education. It's being called elementary school. Others, it's being called primaria. All right. For others, kindergarten also forms the basis of that elementary school and others. And secondly, the difference I noted was that the age range, all right, the age in which the learner is expected to begin and round up is also slightly different. So while we have in Nigeria 6 to 12, in other places we have 5 to 10, 5 to 11, 5 to 13, and the rest of that. Just a slight difference in how we do ours here, all right, and how other countries administer their primary level of education. But in all of this, I found that the aim of primary level of education is still the same, all right, is basically still the same. The idea is that this very level of education introduces the learner to elementary subjects and exposes the learner to basic skills, which is seen for all of these very countries. All right. Now, I found out a study, all right, same in that Orimudu article I was going through. Now, World Bank cited in Orimudu 2004 noted that primary education has a direct impact on earnings and farm productivity. And that's very beautiful. That's to say, a research has been carried out, and the findings of that research show that primary level of education has a direct impact on earnings. You're right, direct impact on the earnings of the citizen of a specific country and also their farm productivity. So, if I may ask you, what's the reason for this? It is predicated on the development of the learners, development of the learner intellectual and cognitive skill of literacy and numeracy. All right, and I'm going to help you distinct the two of those words in a moment. So now, what are the objective of primary level of education? Having understood the concepts around or the concepts guiding primary level of education specifically in Nigeria, all right, because our focus is really in Nigeria, all right, and of course, while we focus in Nigeria, we know this touch the rest and the other part of the world. So the objectives of primary level of education as established in the national policy of education. So number one is to inculcate permanent literacy and numeracy and the ability to communicate effectively. So now to help you understand literacy and numeracy. So now these both terms, all right, both terms are really fundamental. All right, they are fundamental skills that allows an individual to function effectively within a society. All right. Maybe I should brighten up my screen. I think it's a little bit dark. Just give me a moment. All right, awesome. So to inculcate permanent literacy and numeracy and to help them communicate effectively. So literacy focuses on the ability to read and write. All right, the ability to read, write, and speak. Okay, and also to understand different languages. All right. However, at the other side, numeracy deals with the ability to use numbers. All right, and mathematical concepts. All right. This involves simple or basic arithmetic operation of addition, subtraction, and multiplication. And it can also go a little bit complex when we now talk about data analysis, data presentation, all right, and spatial reasoning, problem solving using data, using tools or different available software to interpret data. Now that might be on the complex level. So while literature focuses on the ability to read and write, all right, numeracy talks about the ability to use numbers effectively. All right. It also, number two, the second objective, and I'm just going to go through those objectives you've seen me highlighted because there are many, but I feel there are some that are really really specific to our study as we move on. All right. So number two, it lays a sound basis for scientific and reflective thinking. The thinking process of a child or the thinking capacity of a child begins from birth. That's true. All right. But when you are placed within an environment where you're formally guided, all right, or where you are given, when you're taught some of these elementary subjects, it has a way of sparking up your creativity, has a way of arousing, deep within you, ideas you might run with for a lifetime. And this is on the basis of scientific and reflective thinking. All right. It molds character and develops sound attitude and morals in the child. So while I was going through this, immediately I remembered or recalled the definition of education as put together by Fafunwa in 1997. Well, if you are a trained educationist, I'm definitely sure you should be familiar with that name, Fafunwa. So Fafunwa in 1997, defined education as the aggregate process, all right, by which a learner develops abilities, all right, by which a learner develops attitude and other forms of behavior which are of positive value to his society in which he lives in. All right, so this very third objective aligns with the definition of education. It helps to mold character and develop sound attitude and morals in the child. All right. It also develops the child ability to adapt to the child's changing environment. Now, you understand that we said education, this primary education starts from age 6 down to 12. All right. Within this period, a whole lot of things are changing, in the environment in which the learner finds himself. Biologically, by physical traits and physical feature, the learner is changing. All right. There are many things happening to, his physical being. More so, there are many things happening to his intellectual being. All right. He's able to think differently. So, what education or what primary level of education we do is to develop the child ability to now adapt to that change in environment, change in thinking, change in physical features, changing the people around him also. All right. And also it provides the child with a basic tool for further educational advancements, including preparation for trade, craft of the locality. Of course, every terrain, every state, every local government, or every village or community has a specific trade or craft which they specializes on, which serves as an economic that serves as sustenance for them or serve as an economic value for them. All right. So in this case, what primary level education does is that it helps that child to identify all of that, and the child is able to develop some of those skills. Like in Nigeria, there are certain places, certain quarters in Nigeria where knitting is just so part of their culture. All right. So it's expected that the learner, as he goes through life, all right, goes through this early foundation or early stages of learning, learns that very trade or craft. For others, it's tie and dye, all right. For others, it's basket making and the rest of that. Now, something very important I would love to share with you in less than 2 minutes. So, in pursuance of these above goals, all right, the federal government of Nigeria in 2004 went further to say to enact some of these laws or to enact these objectives. by giving a few guidelines. So we said primary education will be tuition free, universal and compulsory for all children of school age. So primary education is really tuition free, right? So you find this around the public schools, government owned schools, and the rest of that, in exception of the private school. All right. Primary education is tuition free. It's universal and it's compulsory. By law, every child must go through, the primary level of education. Now, secondly, teaching will be practical, explanatory, all right, exploratory rather, and experimental method will be used. What this means is that if you want to really help the learners learn faster, the learners will learn by a combination of, knowledge, exploration, and experiment. They want to try out things. I think I will spend some time in the coming weeks to just talk about the development of, the child's brain to help you understand. From birth, the brain is wired to think and to see things differently. So, what a young learner would be seeing, an old matured learner whose brain has been, rigid, as not rigid in terms of, though I mean not as flexible or fluid as a young learner we have, will not be able to conceive such thoughts or will not be able to have such perspective which the learner would have or which the learner would develop. So teaching is always advised to be practical, always observe, always advised to be experimental and explorative. All right. Study the medium of instruction in primary school will be the language of the environment for the first 3 years. During this period, English will be taught as a subject. Okay. From the fourth year, English will be progressively used as a medium of instruction, and the language of the immediate um, environment and French will be taught as subjects. 3 and 4, let me just help you understand what that means. So we find an environment where Yoruba is the predominant language of that very place. So the medium of instruction during the first 3 years will be that very language called Yoruba, all right, the language of the environment. However, during this period also English will be used as a means of communication, or English will be taught as a subject. And now from the fourth year, English will be progressively used as a medium of instruction, all right, and the language of the immediate environment, which is Yoruba, all right, will also be taught as a subject. All right, this is just to help guide the learner learn effectively. I hope you know that literacy is the ability to read and write. And I was opportune to work as an ad hoc staff with the National Census. All right, and while I did my training with them, we were taught that literacy in itself does not mean the ability to read and write in English alone. If you can read and write in Yoruba, you can read and write in Igbo, you can read and write in Hausa, you're also considered illiterate. All right, you're also considered illiterate. All right. So the fifth is for effective teaching and learning. All right. The teacher people ratio will be 1.35, 1/35. What that means is that in a given school or in a given class, what that means is that the ratio of pupils per teacher will be one. So we have one teacher and we have around 35 pupils in that very class. All right, advancement from one class to another will be based on continuous assessment, you know. And lastly, the primary school living certificate will be based on continuous assessment as well and will be issued locally by the head of the school. So this is what is really primary about primary education. And maybe I should just give you one more. Um, Okay, to take care of those children that were dropped out from primary level education. This is where we're going to be taking our discussion up from next week. So let me leave that. We'll build up our discussion from here next week, because next week we're going to be considering the UNICEF reports. All right, I came across a UNICEF fact sheet about education, and in that very report captured, the level of the completion rates of primary level of education, the non-completion rate, school dropouts, out of school children, and the rest of that. So we're going to consider um, that very subject next week, Monday. All right, and I can assure you it's going to be a very, very beautiful one. So thank you so much for spending out, your precious time with me in this first episode on what is primary about primary education. You can always have a download section or a recorded section of all of our podcasts, all right, at Spotify, AudioMac, YouTube, Facebook, all at Arise Michael Godfrey. All right. And if you want to reach me on WhatsApp, 070 32 300 590, all right, is the number to die. Thank you so much. Do have a great day ahead and have a great week ahead too.